Alright, so this is a project for my daily driver, which is a 2005 Dodge Ram 1500 quad cab. It's got the 5.7 and the Hemi. It's a two-wheel drive, but it's worked for me here in New Jersey just fine. When I got it a couple years ago, I saw the start of the rust in the back panel on the passenger side. The driver's side seems good, but I let it go for a little bit and it's starting to grow, and I did not want to just do fender flares and cover it up and then have it get way worse. So I'm going to try my hand at cutting the rusty panel out and sectioning in a new replacement panel. I'm not going to use this entire panel, but that's what they sell. So I'm going to end up taking a smaller piece out of it and using it to patch here. It hasn't popped through the paint yet, but it's just about to. And I try and do my best to keep the truck clean. It's in generally good condition for a 2005. I think it has 57,500 miles, close to 58,000 miles. Sorry for the wind noise. It's oddly a little bit windy here in New Jersey today, but I'm going to try and set up a time lapse so that I can film this as it goes along, or I may just do the important sections and compile it all together. But anyway, the panel was $55 plus maybe like 8 to 10 to ship it, and I'm only going to use a section out of it. But that's it. Driver's side's good. No issues here in the front or behind. And I'll spray some undercoating underneath here, and of course underneath the other side. But the rest of the truck's in pretty damn good shape. Some scratches and some wear and tear, but I just don't want to be one of those guys who's riding around with a whole rusty fender if I can avoid it, or bedside. So I haven't decided if I'm going to paint this whole panel or if I'm just going to try and match the color and then use a blender to blend the new clear coat with the old clear coat. Again, it's a truck. I do use it as a truck. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I'd prefer to have a decent to good paint job on it instead of just festering rust and rot. That's just my way of trying to do things. So we're going to work on this today, see how far we get. Got the welder compressor. The chair is not for me to rest, but I'm probably going to mount this GoPro to it. And some of my cutting tools. Not sure what I'm going to use yet, but we'll get it done. That's it for now. And here's the finished welding and grinding. I didn't have the best day welding. I've certainly done better, but for this panel, this will do. It actually just started raining as I was doing the last round of welds, so that kind of slowed me down in my tracks. But it stopped raining now, so I'm going to do first skim coat of a body filler. So here's the patch panel after about three and a half coats of body filler. The half coat was just for a little couple things on this rounded edge, but pretty good, blended smooth. Used a assortment of flat sanding pads and some contoured stuff, but we're gonna hit it with a coat of black primer, maybe 2 coats, to use as a guide coat, and then I'll come back and scuff it with the flat sanding block. And if it all sands off at the same time, then that means I have a good matching contour. But if there's pockets or bellies, I'll have to go back with the body filler. But again, it's just a truck, so I'm not looking for perfection. If it was another vehicle or the Camaro over there, that would take a lot more coats of filler. It's a day later, and the primer we sprayed on yesterday I used as a guide coat. So what you do is you take one of these flat sanding paddles, I guess they're called, in a crisscross pattern, back and forth. I use 220 grit, crisscross, that way if you're not going this way. So crisscross, and it'll show you your high spots because it will sand through the black primer, as it did here and here and a little bit here. If you were to go this way, you'd probably make rows or lines, but crisscross gives you more surface area to cover. And I'm pretty happy with those being the high spots. So I feathered down the edges a little bit, and I'm going to just degrease it real quick with some prep spray. Then I will be spraying on the black colored primer that I'm going to leave for 2 or 3 days, maybe even more depending on the weather, before we actually paint it with the black paint and clear coat that my neighbor happens to already have a gallon of. So at this point, I think we're done sanding, done with body filler. It's just primer and eventually paint later in the week. That's the primer we're using. It's black. It's not a sealer primer, but it's dyed black so that hopefully my black paint is not a different color when it goes on top. Probably do about 2 coats of this. Let that dry for a couple minutes. Also, while I did what I did when I was underneath here, did some undercoating and a little bit of rust proof in there. And we're back. So 3 coats of primer. I did 3 coats of black primer. Doesn't look that black, but if it was the usual gray primer, it would stand out a lot more. I'm just hoping the black primer helps with the richness of the color black paint when I spray it on Wednesday if the weather's good. But I peeled off the tape and my surrounding masking stuff, and of course I got to clean up the bed, but things are going to get messier sooner than later, so mostly just looking at the contours, the shape, how it blends, and I'll say I'm pretty happy with it. So far so good. We'll give it a couple days. We'll hit it with a red scuff pad, feather sand the edges, and then black paint, clear coat, and the clear coat blender. That'll do it, we hope. Alright, today's September 6th. It's about 80 degrees and sunny out. We scuffed the patch panel that was primered with 500 grit, and we're going to be painting, what, 3 coats? Yeah. 3 coats of black base, and then clear, and then a blender. So this is 2 coats of paint. We ended up switching the truck around so the sun wasn't directly on it. My neighbor Dave is helping me paint. I'm gonna do, I think, at least one more coat. Then it's time for clear and the blender. It's okay. You could definitely see some imperfections in my body work. Again, it's just a truck, and I'm not a pro. All right, so a couple coats of paint, and we had one problem with a run. So we had to wet sand and readjust it. My neighbor sprayed it, and then we did 3 coats of clear and a blender to blend the clear. So I could see some imperfections in my, I don't know if it's the bodywork or the welding, but it's pretty damn close. Sometimes you could see a little bit of a bend in where the panel is. I'm gonna give it about 4 or 5 days, and then I'll go at it with buffing it by hand, maybe a machine, and then we'll polish it, get everything to blend, and then we can call it done. But the biggest thing is there's no more rust, and we shouldn't have any anytime soon.